Good morning. Two hands here. Both hands I will be calling a pre-flop two bet on the button. So hand number one, I have Ace Jack offsuit, villain 16 in early position is going to open for three big bets, and it folds around to me. So this player, I have 36 hands on him. Right now he is at 19-17 with 21% three bet. He seems to be aggressive, maybe on the tighter side. Uh, just a note of concern is that with his pre-flop numbers, his c-bet flop is only 50%. This could be due to position. So positionally, he's 19-17, and sure enough, he really hasn't opened up, played any hands in early position, any out of eight. 8 attempts folded all hands, but then he was 33% middle position, 25 in the cutoff, 0 in the button. Uh, Maybe he's just having hands in mid position and cutoff, and not really having any sort of hands on the button or early position. That's a possibility. In terms of his c betting, when he's in position, he's c bet 2 out of 3 times. Out of position, he was in this spot once and did not c bet it. So, a few hands. What are we going to do with his open raising range? Well, I think we're going to give him um, somewhat of a decent range. Um, we don't know. So this is a 25 NL game. We don't know, if they raise all pocket pairs. Probably not. I think I've been encountering a lot of people who will just limp with the smaller pocket pairs. With this position, an early position, I think he would at least raise down to sevens or eights. We still have to come up with the rest of his range, so I think maybe ace 10, king jack, um, king queen off, ace jack off. This gets us to 9.35%. I think we'll add in just two of those suited connectors. I think that's a good 10% range. It's a tight 10% range, probably, but probably a little too loose for an early position player, for a tight, like a normal tight early position player. So I think we're gonna go with that range. My ace jack offsuit isn't gonna be. It's gonna do okay, kind of in the middle of his range. Obviously, he has all these pocket pairs that beat us, and his aces that he has, we're either tying or he beats us. But he does have king queen king jack queen jack jack 10 10 9. I think you can make a case where we could fold this against this tighter player. Against a loose player, I wouldn't, but somebody that's tighter, maybe 13-14% VPIP, uh, where early position he is only playing like 6 or 7% of hands, then I think Ace Jack offsuits is fun to fold. That player is going to be playing super tight. When he comes in, he's likely has you down to at least maybe 40% at best equity. Now you could use position if you have a plan going into the flop. So at this point, I think he is kind of aggressive. I think that he's going to continue with it. He might continue c betting. Uh, Kind of hard to tell if that's what he's going to do. Uh, Here, I went ahead and called with the idea that I have to be careful if an ace flops. If a jack flops, then uh, I think I'm going to probably be okay. Just going to have to watch for these overpairs. But I think I can. I think with the overpairs, they'll tell us. Uh, if we raise, I think at some point they will either lead again into us or raise us at that point. So I just call both blinds fold, and we see a flop. And the flop's actually pretty good for us. We hit top pair with the ace kicker. Um, we don't have a spade, unfortunate, and also unfortunately, there is a possibility of a straight draw now. So on this board, we should be ahead. Um, Not a huge amount, but we're going to be ahead. Flopzilla says 52%. That's against his entire range. So what is he going to do? I don't think he's going to bet all of his range. So what is he gonna do? So he c bets like half pot. I think he's gonna c bet top pair, over pair, two pair set. I think he's gonna be c betting all of those. I don't have any reason to suspect that he's going to slow play like trips on this, and I don't really have any notes on him. Pocket pair below top pair tens, I think he will bet because he also has the open into straight draw. Middle pair, I think 10-9 is going to bet. The weak pair, pocket sevens, might also bet here because he's got a gut shot. Um, Ace high, I don't think all of the ace highs are going to bet. I think the flush draws are going to bet. I think the open and straight draws are going to bet. The gut shots, I don't think the gut shots, and not all overcards are going to bet. So I kind of think you've got the flush draw, and maybe even the two card backdoor flush draw. I don't know, it's tough to say what he would do. I'm going to say, based on his aggression, he may go ahead and bet. But he might not. It's only 2%. Let's leave it out. So he's c betting 59.8%, 60%. Against that range, we're only 39%. There's a lot of hands that he beats, specifically over pair. But I don't think we can fold here. I think we have to look ahead and think, well, we may be behind to queens, kings, and aces. We block one ace. If let's say 7 comes out or a queen comes out, there's a possibility that he may shut down and give us credit for the 10, which we can bet and pick up the pot. Also, if the spade comes, we may be able to bet and pick up the pot with the spade. Now the question is, how do we best represent that type of draw? Do we raise? Do we just call? I think we could just call here. I think the raise could look like it's a spade draw, but his range is just, I think, a little too strong for that. There are times when I would raise, where I would raise my flush draw, but I think here it just kind of makes a little bit more sense maybe to call and see if he's going to bet again on the turn, depending on what the turn card comes out. What I don't want to do is raise it and then have him fold out like his Jack King hand. And again, maybe that's a little bit too pessimistic, I guess you can say. I mean, it's King Jack. I've got 2 combos of that, so there's really not. I mean, it's very small percentage. I don't think he'll ever fold a top over pair or set. Raising's going to build that pot, and I don't know if I want to build a pot with just top pair. So I called. Turn was a 5 spades. I thought that was actually pretty good. It's going to freeze him up if he has an overpair and possibly allow us to get a fold if he checks and we bet. So he does check. What is he going to check? I think he's going to go into shutdown mode. I think he's going to shut down with top pair. I think the only thing he might not bet is a flush. I think a flush is going to bet out here. I think even a set might check, just to be cautious. This is a 25 NL game. I think some of these 25 NL players are a little bit too cautious. So, I think if it's a flush, I think he continues betting, because I think a 10 might possibly call. What do? I bet. I bet less than half pot, which I don't know why I did less than half pot. I think in order for this to be solid, I think it makes sense to bet a little bit more. Now the smaller bet kind of either looks like we've got the ace of spades, all right, with the flush, or it looks like it's a weak attempt at a bluff. I think that's as best as we can say. So, when he calls, we have to look back and say, okay, well, what does he have? Well, I guess he can have the nut flush draw. I think he could have the second nut flush draw that he's calling. Third nut flush draw with the queens, maybe. I bet small enough that he may call. I don't think he's going to call with a weak flush draw. I think the open-ended straight draw might still call because he's concerned with that. I do think his pocket pair below top pair, that is the tens. I think he's still going to call those, but it's going to be because it's open-ended straight draw. Middle pair, same thing. It's an open-ended straight draw. The weak pair sevens, I think, will probably give up. Yeah, he has open ender. He's got six or a 10, but if a 10 comes, a queen's going to beat him. So I think he's just going to give up. So at this point, it's 85.5% that he would check call. Again, I'd say I think the flush would have bet again. If he has the flush, then we make a note to say, hey, he's capable of check. Once he hits his draw, he's capable of slow playing at that point. We're behind. So I don't think this, made a whole lot of sense. I think if we bet larger, we get rid of the third nut flush draw, the queens. I think we could possibly get rid of the straight draws. And top pair, that's a good question. I think top pair may give up, over pair may give up. It depends on how large. If they calls, I think we're gonna have to fire second barrel. So river was 2 clubs. I thought that was actually pretty good because now any of those single flush draws now missed, and there's no reason for them to call. So like aces, kings, queens. There's with the spade, no reason for them to call. Pot's 28.12 big blinds. All right, villain checks. I think he's gonna probably check everything, his entire range, and then it's up to us as to what we're going to do. So against this entire range, I think we are at 47.8%. Question is, do we check behind or do we bet? I checked, and let's see if that's a good thing to do. So if we bet, what do I think he's going to call? I think if we bet again, he's probably going to call with a set, but I think he's going to fold his overpair, top pair, and everything else. So he's going to call 14.9%, which we lose. All right, but then, so we'll say that's 15%, and 85% of the time we're going to win. So let's say we bet pot. 85% of the time we're going to win what's in the pot. And then the other 15% of the time, we're going to lose our pot size bet. So if we bet pot, we have a profit of 19.684. If we check, we lose. So if we check, our equity is only 47.87. So we will win 47%, 48%. And the pot is 28.1. So our equity for checking behind is only 13, if our assumptions are right. I think our argument here is to go ahead and bet. So what could we bet? Let's say half pot. I think if we bet half pot, that may incentivize maybe some of the overpairs to call. What if they don't? What if they still only call with a set? So let's figure that out. So if I bet half pot, we still have 85% of the time we're going to win the pot. And then the other 15% of the time we are going to lose a half pot bet, which is, we will say, 14 big bets. So our profit is 21.8. So it looks like it might be better to go ahead and bet like a half size pot bet instead of a pot size bet if he folds the same amount. If he's going to call half pot at a little bit higher frequency, maybe with all of the overpairs, then we have much more of a concern. So we're looking at now he's calling 46% of the time that we're going to lose. So let's run those numbers. We'll say 47, so 53% of the time when we bet half pot, we're going to win what's in the pot, and then the other 47% of the time we will lose our half pot bet. And that equity is only the EV is only 8.34. So kind of comes down. would he call with the overpairs or not to that half pot size. We didn't bet. I think we probably should have bet. We checked behind, uh, and he showed trip eights. So in this case, I think we saved ourselves some money because he had trip eights, and trip eights was actually in his range. We had it, and we kind of said we thought he would check. He would be scared of the flush. Uh, would he have folded to a bet? I don't know. It's hard to say. But he did slow down with trips, and we had it in his range. And I think the EV calculations would argue that we missed out on a bet on the river based on the fold equity. Based on the fold equity. All right, so that's hand number one. Let's get hand number two up here. So before I move this off, I did remember that with it, and I was writing up my note for this. Yeah, this isn't quite right. So 47% of the time that he calls, we still have to consider our equity because we did sets and the top pairs, and with his top pairs, he had we tie with ace jack, but then we beat all the other stuff. So our EV is actually going to be higher than Liss based on whatever our equity was of the hands that he called. So I still think it's if we bet half pot and he folds all of his set. Right, I think if we bet half pot, we still have equity, and I think it would still be probably more, possibly, um, than just checking. Yeah, we have to think, would he call with worse hands? Well, he would if he calls with king jack and queen jack, and maybe jack 10. But if he never calls with those, then it's best just to check behind, and take that sort of equity. All right, so hand number two, queen 10 on the button, queen 10 suited on the button. We're at a 10 NL game. We are currently six-handed in this game. The hijack raised, cutoff folded, and it is to me. So let's see what we are going to do. So this player, I have 30 hands on him. He is 17-17. So based on his stats, we really can't tell if he is positionally aware. All that we can do is go on the fact that out of 30 hands, he has played 5 of them. And of those 5, 1 of them have come from the big blind. 2 have come from the small blind. So, maybe he's, if he's put money in the pot, he's going to pay to see it. Or, maybe it was limped when he was in the small blind. He just completed it. So in this, we're going to give him somewhat of a wider range. I think we're going to take out those low pocket pairs. Let's give him all of the suited aces. We'll assume that he is a little bit on the looser side since he's coming in for the cutoff, so something like that. That's 14.8%. Against that range, we're at 41%, which I think is fine. We could go ahead and 3-bet with queen 10. He would likely fold all but his best hands. But with queen 10 of diamonds, I think this might be okay to go ahead and call and see the flop. When we look at the players behind us, neither of them have an overly high 3-bet frequency, so I'm not too concerned about calling and then facing a squeeze. I called, both blinds folded, and we took a flop. So board was 6 of diamonds, 9 of spades, 7 of hearts. So rainbow. It's actually pretty decent for us. We've got a gut shot draw. We have backdoor diamond draw. We've got 2 overs against a player that's probably playing a larger range. So, against his entire range, you can see that we're not doing that great right now because he's got pocket pairs. He could hit his pocket pairs. He could hit his draws. all of these pocket pairs, just crush us at this point. But yeah, we can kind of, we can't. I don't think we have this idea of just folding right now because we have some equity in the hand. He c-bets. His only other time, his only other opportunity, he also c-bet. He c-bet half pot. I think we can call here. So if we think about what kind of hands he's going to c-bet with, it's possible that he's going to c-bet with everything. Definitely 17, 17, 13. He probably would c-bet with most everything on this flop. Would it be all ace high hands? No, I don't think so. I think we'll restrict it to just those ace highs that have a 2-card backdoor flush. Same thing with maybe the overcards, something a little bit stronger like that. And maybe we have to go back and add all the overcards. So we'll say like 67.9%. He's going to c-bet here. All of his pairs, open-ender, gut shots, 2-card backdoor flush draws, and so forth. Now, against that range, we're still at only 31%, but I think I've got a plan for this, which is if I improve any part of my equity, I could go ahead and steal it. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to make some move, because right now I'm thinking this board isn't really going to hit all of his big cards. This should hit my range harder than his range. So I raised it. And I think this is probably a pretty decent raise. Now, I didn't raise full pot, but I raised it such that kind of I can rep the 9, I can rep an 8, I could rep, like, let's say 9-10, I can rep 9-8, I could possibly rep 9-7, 9-6, 2-pair and all that stuff. And when I do that, I think he's going to end up folding his 2-card backdoor flush draws. If he calls, I think he's probably going to fold a lot of his gut shots. He might call once, but then fold to a turn bet. His weak pairs, 5s, I think he would fold. I don't think he would call with them. Possibly even the middle pairs. I think he would just dump them. So what did he do? He did call. So we're gonna restrict his hands. So I think we're gonna get rid of middle pair, weak pair. We'll leave the open enders. We'll leave the we'll take out the 2-card backdoor flush draws. Yeah, 2-card backdoor flush draws. The over cards are out, and the gut shots. Maybe we'll leave the gut shots in. So when he calls, I don't think so. We're going to take the gut shots out. I don't think he's going to do that. So against that range, against his calling range, we didn't improve our situation. We're still at 24%. But that's no surprise, because what I'm trying to do is set up a bluff and hopefully take it down on the turn. So on the turn, it was a queen, and I think that was probably a good card for me because it allowed me to pair up. So at this point, I now jumped against his entire range of 54%. He checks to me. I think he's going to check his entire range, and I bet half pot. What do I think he's going to call with? Well, I think if I bet half pot, I think he's going to raise possibly his sets. I think he'll check raise his sets. I think he'll check raise his 2-pair. His overpair, aces and kings. I kind of think we're gonna have to go back. So when I check raised, I think his sets were gonna probably. I'm gonna say we're gonna set up a estimate and say 50% of it. 50% of the time he would go ahead and raise me at that point. His overpair, though, I think he would have just shoved, and I think 2-pair. think when I bet, I just think they're get two pair and over pair. It's too strong a hands. His top pair, I think, is going to call. So kind of consider his check raise frequencies, and then once the queen hit, he's going to check all his entire range. Um, he still has the sets at 50%, and I think now his sets probably raise, check raise, so it leaves the calls. Um, he doesn't have any overpair. He doesn't have the top pair. I think with his calls, his middle pair might still call. Not believing that not believing that I have a big hand. His weak pairs, 8-7s. I don't think he's calling for the pair aspect. I think he is calling because of the straight open and straight draw aspect. What about the 9-10 with the gut shot? Maybe. I'm going to say no. I think he's calling open and straight draw. I think he's calling flush draw, and he's got that middle pair, which is the 10-9, 9-8, ace-9, which were all part of like the gut shots. Gut shot draws. So if he calls, we're at 81%, which I think is really good. And he did call. And then the river was the 10 of spades. Now, here, I think most players are just going to check to the better and hope they bet if they have a big hand. I don't really think he's going to lead out. I think if he leads out, it's going to be more of a blocking bet. And I think for that, it may be like a straight. I don't like the 10 getting there because all of the 8s got there, and I think that makes straights a big part of his range. So he checks, and now it's up to us. What do we do? Do we bet or do we just check behind? I think if we bet, I think the only thing we're getting called by is going to be that straight and the flush. Maybe the 2 pair. I don't think the weak pair is going to call anymore. So if we do that, we only have 11% equity if he calls. So with that 11% equity, I think it's better just to go ahead and check behind, see, take our value for the showdown, and hope that he didn't have the 8. So that's what I did. I checked instead of betting. He showed 3-5. 3-5 wasn't even in his range. So where do we go wrong? We went wrong basically in his initial construction. So we didn't even have it. We thought he was much tighter. Now that we know he's got 3-5 suited, if he raised that, he's probably raising his suited kings. We don't know if he's going to do 2 gappers or not. But I bet he's going to raise all of his offsuit aces, something like that. Something really wide. And then when he check calls, I mean, when you think about it, I bet and I raised it, and he called with a backdoor flush draw and the gut shot and the dummy end of the gut shot. And then he called again on the turn. This guy is just a calling station. I don't know why he was calling. I don't even know if we could justify anything. But against a normal player, that's going to be a tighter range. I like our check behind because it's going to be way too likely that he hit his flush or straight draw once he called again. So calling the flop check raise, no, it's going to happen. They're going to call, some people, if they have money in the pot, they're going to call that raise to see if they improve. And when they improve, then I think they're just going to call it. They're going to call down at that point. So we got hand number 1. We didn't get this hand, but this hand you can't predict. All you can do is make a note on this player and say, hey, he's willing to call. So you can see I don't have any of the two bets. I called 2 bets from the blinds. You can see the offsuit hands that he's played. Limp and called a raise with King Jack suited. Played turn draw aggressively. I don't know, he must have thought I was bluffing or something like that. And I was. Initially, I was semi-bluffing. But then once I hit the queen, instead I hit top pair. if I bet the river, I don't think he's calling. All right, so these are two hands. Look tomorrow for two more.